Greetings! This is part 4 of my maze game tutorial for Android. Last time I talked about the maze generation algorithm and wrote the outline. Today I'm going to implement the getNeighbor method, the removeWall method, and add the attribute visited to the cell class. For your information, I updated Android Studio to version 3.0.1. In our cell class, let's add another Boolean variable called visited, which is false by default. Now I'm going to make this getNeighbor method. Private, it should return a cell object, getNeighbor, and it also receives a cell object. First, we need to check if there are unvisited neighbors. Since there could be multiple, I'm going to use an array list to store them. Array list for cell objects called neighbors equals new array list. An array list is like an array which can change its size after it has been initialized. Let's check the left neighbor. The left neighbor is the cell with the same row index, so cell.row, but with a column index -1. And we want to know if visited is false. Then we can add it to our neighbors. There could be a problem. If the column of cell is 0, this index is -1, but an array index of -1 doesn't exist, and it would give us an error. So we are only allowed to check the left neighbor if the column of cell is greater than 0. Now let's copy that for the other neighbors. The left, the right, the top, and the bottom neighbor. The right neighbor is the cell with the same row index, but the column index +1. And we are only allowed to check it if the column is less than the total number of columns in our maze -1, because it starts at 0. The top neighbor is the cell in the same column, but with a row index -1. And we're only allowed to check it if the row index of cell is greater than 0. The bottom neighbor is the cell in the same column, but with a row index +1. And we are only allowed to check it if the row of cell is less than the total number of rows -1. The next step is to choose a random one of the unvisited neighbors. For this we need a random number generator. So let's make a new variable, private, of a random class, or rather the random class, and call it random. Let's initialize it in our constructor. Random equals new random. Now we can calculate a random index. Int index equals random.nextInt, and I give it the size of the neighbors array list. So if we have 3 neighbors that are unvisited, this random index could be 0, 1 or 2. So it has the right range for an array index or array list index, because it starts at 0. After that, return the neighbor with the random index with the get method. But we only want to return a neighbor if there is one. So if neighbors.size is greater than 0, otherwise we return null. And we don't need an else because it would stop at the return command. Now let's write the remove wall method. Private, since it doesn't return anything, void, remove wall, and it gets 2 cells as arguments. So cell current and cell next. There are 4 possibilities. The current cell can be to the right of the next cell, to the left, above or below. First let's check if it's below. So if the current column equals the next column and the current row is the next row plus 1, then we remove the top wall of the current cell. Current.topWall equals false, and also the bottom wall of the next cell. Next.bottomWall equals false. Nice. Copy that and paste it. Now the second scenario is if the current wall is above the next wall. Then its row is the next row minus 1. If the current wall is to the right of the next wall, its column index is the column index of next plus 1. If it's to the right, we have to remove the left wall and the right wall of the next cell. And last, if the current wall is to the left of the next wall, its column number is the column number of next minus 1. Then we remove the right wall of current and the left wall of next. It's time to see if this actually works. Ooh, very nice. Look at that. Good coloring. Now we can change the number of columns and rows back to 7 and 10 and run it again. Perfect. That's enough for today. So until next time, keep watching the skies.